All right, Robby, what's on your radar?
Okay, so last year, Dave Chappelle's comedy special, The Closer, drew the ire of the transgender activist community, and Netflix became the target of protests. Remember this?
Trans lives matter. Trans lives matter. Why is he breaking my sign? Why is he breaking my sign? Don't you have free speech rights? Don't you have free speech rights as all of you? Oh, look, there's such a fire. He's got a weapon! He's got a weapon! He's got a weapon!
Ted Sarandos, co-CEO of the streaming giant, initially defended Chappelle's right to create offensive comedy. Then he walked back his comments somewhat in an effort to appease what he described as a group of employees who were definitely feeling pain and hurt. He said, quote, "I screwed up that internal communication. I did that. I screwed it up in two ways. First and foremost, I should have led with a lot more humanity." So this left matters somewhat unclear as to whether Netflix would still be inclined to feature artists like Chappelle, whose work involves upsetting some people, or whether subjects that offend the sensibilities of progressive employees would now be off limits. Thankfully, Netflix has just now added an artistic expression policy to its well-publicized company culture memo. This policy states, in no uncertain terms, that the company will continue to platform provocative creators and ideas, and if employees have a problem with that, well, they should work elsewhere. Here is the policy, quote, "Not everyone will like or agree with everything on our service. While every title is different, we approach them based on the same set of principles. We support the artistic expression of the creators we choose to work with. We program for a diversity of audiences and tastes, and we let viewers decide what's appropriate for them versus having Netflix censor specific artists or voices. As employees, we support the principle that Netflix offers a diversity of stories, even if we find some titles counter to our own personal values. Depending on your role, you may need to work on titles you perceive to be harmful. And if you'd find it hard to support our content breadth, Netflix may not be the best place for you," end quote. This is a great statement, and it should actually serve as a model for other companies that produce ideological content or are involved in the marketplace of ideas. Many of these firms hire substantial numbers of progressive young people in an attempt to eventually offer content that is relevant to this key demographic. But in recent years, a problem has emerged. Some subset of these millennial and Gen Z employees have adopted an elite college campus mindset, and they expect their bosses to proactively eliminate speech that is emotionally upsetting to them, just as they had expected school administrators and professors to do so. Companies thus find themselves in the untenable position trying to meet the expectations of a small but hostile, militantly progressive workforce, even though these expectations inevitably work against the interests of millions of customers. Among the general public, Dave Chappelle is extremely popular, making clear to employees from the get-go that the company is not going to heed unreasonable employee demands relating to speech and expression should be considered a best practice moving forward. Setting these expectations up front will deprive hostile employees of their sense of betrayal while reassuring customers that excessive outrage will never dictate content choices. There's a single, voluntarily adoptable corporate policy that could de-accelerate the culture wars. Well, I think it's probably this one. Unsurprisingly, it's a move that attracted a lot of positive attention from people who are concerned about creative freedom on the platform. Elon Musk tweeted the following. So he tweeted this: "Good move by Netflix." So it's it's part of this new kind of defiance. We saw this with Jeff Bezos, and we're going to talk about that a little later on the show. But what did you make of it, Kim? I was very pleased to see Netflix say, "Look, this is what we do. We're not going to be overly, picky about what the content is. It might trouble some people. If you can't deal with that, that's absolutely fine. Don't work here." That's what it should be. Don't work here.
Right, and that's the only thing that they can do. And it's nice to see that they're finally, I think, implementing a policy like this and having to explicitly say this to their employees. It's kind of bizarre that we're at this point in society that has to be said. That, hey, by the way, you might not agree with all of our customers. Wow, shocker! You might not agree with everybody, but it is. And even those who think that they're woke or whatever they want to label themselves, they don't even agree with each other. I mean, that's one of the issues also that goes on with the left eating the left. We see this all the time, the left eating their own. And it's because you're going to find a point of contention at some point So you might think one comedy special's fine, but the person sitting next to you might say, no, that's a line for me. And then the person next to them might say, oh no, but the previous one before that was the line for me. And you just keep having to set up these. I mean, how do you even manage around that? How do you even operate a company when everyone's got their own different level of what is acceptable to them and what is considered offensive? So the only thing you can do is say, you're not going to agree with everything, tough luck. That's just the way it is.
That's what I hope that companies like Netflix are realizing, that appeasement of the small number of sort of hysterically pro-censorship voices is a losing strategy because there's no endpoint. Then there will be a subset of them that will denounce the previous woke censors as not censorship. It's a French Revolution, like they get the guillotine and then it's on to something else. And there's the natural endpoint is the entire company being shut down and producing no content because all content is unsafe, it has some misinformation risk that is too high for a certain kind of progressive young person. So you can't. That's an audience of one or fewer people. Ultimately, you're cannibalizing yourselves by giving into this degree. I think they might be starting to realize that. I think they might be starting to realize that the vast majority of people who watch Netflix, who want to pay this company money, who want to enter into an arrangement with them where they pay for a viewing experience, don't care about this, and they don't, and in fact, to the extent they care about it, they don't want Netflix to give into it. They don't want companies to give into things like this. That the audience of the hostile to the given mindset is much, 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 much bigger. Maybe it's less influential. Maybe it doesn't, command as much currency on social media or in the pages of the New York Times or in elite media, but it's bigger. It's a bigger customer base.
Yeah, and a company like Netflix that is supposed to be serving a vast, a wide array of tastes. I mean, I certainly don't watch everything on Netflix. I skip most stuff. I mean, that's kind of what we all do, right? We go onto the platform, we browse around, we skip most everything, and then we watch the things that we want to watch that seem to interest us. And for them to have to try to cater to the subset of people, I'm glad that they're realizing that they just cannot do that anymore. More companies hopefully will do that. I know. And a lot of them are starting to see there's no benefit in actually doing it. I think Spotify probably learned that lesson with Joe Rogan when they gained 2 million subscribers during the controversy. Rather than losing people, more people wanted to have access to that content than not. So, maybe more of these companies, and I know Elon, if he does end up buying Twitter or not, will have a similar, I'm sure, outlook with Twitter. Like, hey, listen, maybe you don't like all the tweets that happen on the platform. If you don't like it, if it's offensive to you, then maybe this isn't the best place for you to work. That might just be a better solution. Maybe maybe we just break up and you go your own way and censor your Twitter feed.
Imagine that, just letting people choose whether they want to consume this thing or engage with this thing and not being overly worried that it's the end of society if not everyone agrees.
No, it's all dangerous, Robby. We must stop you from consuming this content and reading these tweets and watching those movies and those comedy specials. You must be stopped. It's dangerous for you.
I know that. I'm sure there's somebody out there who'll be like, this guy watches, how many times can one healthy, adjusted adult watch Rick and Morty? This has to be stopped. They looked at my Netflix viewing habits. Okay, we'll have more Rising right after this.